855-581-6858 today. Spectrum Business, made to work.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
I'm Dean Meminger. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. A teen accused of carrying out a deadly school shooting and his father appear in court separately Friday morning. The 14-year-old was arraigned on 4 counts of murder and is expected to be tried as an adult. His father, Colin Gray, was arraigned on 14 charges, including 2 counts of second-degree murder.
I'm not trying to send a message. I'm just trying to use the tools in my arsenal to prosecute people for the crimes they commit.
A legal win for Donald Trump. A judge has delayed sentencing in his New York hush money case until after the election. Judge Juan Merchan says he made the decision in part to avoid any appearance of affecting the outcome of the presidential race. But the former president spent part of Friday in court for another case, fighting to overturn the verdict in his E. Jean Carroll sex abuse lawsuit.
I got sued essentially for defamation because I'm denying a story where I'm right. I should be suing her for defamation.
Vice President Kamala Harris says she raised over $360 million in August in her first full month as a candidate. Trump's team says they brought in $130 million over that same time period. The 2024 race for the White House is on track to be the most expensive election in history. Those are your headlines. Now your weather on the ones.
Hey everybody, I'm meteorologist Nate Harrington. As we close out the first full week of September and enter the weekend, it's more of the same. More heavy rainfalls, an area of low pressure plagues the Gulf Coast states, and more extreme heat across the west. But a long cold front extending from the Great Lakes all the way into Texas brings some fall-like weather for folks across the eastern portion of the lower 48. Extreme heat, though, will continue for the weekend, but a pattern change is coming. We discuss that and have a look at the tropics, too, coming up in 10 minutes.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Dean Meminger. In a historic first, a suspected teen shooter and his father appeared in court on the same day after a school shooting left 2 students and 2 teachers dead in Georgia. Colt Gray and his father, Colin Gray, appeared separately within hours of each other. Neither entered a plea. The 14-year-old is expected to be tried as an adult and could face life in prison. His father facing up to 180 years behind bars. Spectrum News anchor Carla Redditt has a look at what happened inside the courtroom and where the investigation is headed.
Shackled and escorted into a Georgia courtroom, long hair covering his face, the teenager accused of carrying out a deadly school shooting facing a judge.
In essence, you're charged with 4 counts of felony murder.
Family members of the victims looking on, some wiping tears, another seen holding a stuffed animal, sitting just feet away from the teen charged with killing 2 students and 2 teachers during Wednesday's shooting at a high school in North Georgia. Shortly after his son, Colin Gray, led into the same courtroom, the 54-year-old appearing emotional. He and his son were questioned last year about online threats to commit a school shooting, but the case was closed. Several months later, investigators say he bought the AR-style gun used in the shooting as a present for his son. That's according to 2 law enforcement sources.
These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
The arrest and charging of an accused school shooter's parent reminiscent of the recent landmark case in Michigan, where Jennifer and James Crumbly were sentenced to prison time. The first time parents were held criminally responsible for a mass school shooting committed by their child.
A lot of this case is going to depend on what the father knew or should have known.
Neither the alleged shooter nor his father entered a plea on Friday. Prosecutors say additional charges are expected to be filed in this case.
And Carla Reddit joins us now. And Carla, you just mentioned an additional charge or additional charges are actually expected against the 14-year-old. What are authorities saying and what are they waiting on?
Well, Dean, we heard from Barrow County District Attorney Brad Smith Friday. He said the upcoming charges will be filed after investigators speak with the victims who are still recovering from the shooting.
When the evidence comes in and they've been able a chance to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually, we will get with them, and there will be additional charges that address the other victims in the case.
Smith adds the 14-year-old will face a grand jury that has already been seated and will meet on October 17th. Now, this will be followed by a scheduled arraignment before the trial process begins. The teen will not face the death penalty since he is under 18, but he could face a max sentence of life in prison with or without parole. Now, as for the father, Colin Gray, it's unknown whether he will face more charges. 9 other victims hospitalized from the attack are expected to make a full recovery. Dee?
All right, Carla Reddit from our Charlotte, North Carolina newsroom. Thank you for that update. Veering from the campaign trail to a New York courtroom, Donald Trump watched Friday as his lawyer fought to overturn a verdict in his federal sex abuse lawsuit. And while the former president hopes for a legal victory in that case, Trump did secure a win in his hush money case, also in New York. Spectrum's Evan Kosloff tells us sentencing in that case will not happen before the November election.
A major decision by New York Judge Juan Merchan, pushing Trump's sentencing in his hush money case to November 26th, 3 weeks after Election Day. In a 4-page ruling, Merchan argued that holding a hearing before the election could create the appearance that it's meant to affect the vote. Writing in part, "This is not a decision this court makes lightly, but it is the decision which in this court's view best advances the interests of justice." Trump was convicted of 34 felony charges in May, a jury finding he falsified records to hide an affair with adult film star Stormy Daniels. Trump's lawyers have pushed to delay the sentencing, arguing that it would amount to election interference if he were sentenced before the polls opened.
It's a momentous victory for Trump, who has tried everything possible and has cited the reputational harm that he would absorb if he were sentenced before.
Trump has celebrated the ruling, once again calling the case a witch hunt and a political attack. And this wasn't the only legal development for the former president. Earlier on Friday, Trump was in a New York courtroom calling for a new trial after a jury found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation last year. That 9-person jury awarding $5 million in damages to columnist E. Jean Carroll after she accused Trump of sexually abusing her in a department store in the 90s and then defaming her years later. Trump's lawyers have argued that the first trial was biased against him because the judge decided to allow additional evidence and testimony, including from a woman who accused Trump of groping her on a plane decades earlier. Trump has vehemently denied Carroll's accusations, and on Friday he mocked the woman who said he groped her.
I know you're going to say it's a terrible thing to say, but it couldn't have happened. It didn't happen, and she would not have been the chosen one.
And of course, former President Donald Trump is balancing his legal challenges with a political campaign. In fact, just hours after leaving the courthouse, he was back on the trail speaking at an event hosted by the Fraternal Order of Police. Dean, there's going to be a pivotal moment next Tuesday when he takes the debate stage against Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and Evan, in a sign that the election is coming quickly, early voting was actually set to start in North Carolina on Friday, but it was delayed while a legal challenge plays out over Robert F. Kennedy's name on the ballot. Fill us in on this.
Right, so this all started a couple weeks ago when RFK Jr. dropped out of the race and endorsed former President Donald Trump. Since then, he's been trying to take his name off of the ballot in states like North Carolina, but he faced some resistance from the State Board of Elections that basically said it would be a big burden and a tremendous cost to reprint all of these ballots. So heading into Friday, that's where we thought we were. We thought that the ballots were going to be heading out, but then the Court of Appeals stepped in and said not so fast, saying that those ballots cannot go out until his name is removed. Dean, all of this can change. There could be appeals, but the big takeaway is that this entire process is on hold until they figure this out.
All right, Evan Kosloff in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you.
The new number is about jobs in the U.S. Just ahead on Spectrum News, what those numbers mean for a possible interest rate cut this month.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
At Spectrum, we know that internet is a vital tool to help you fulfill your dreams.
My dream is to become a video game developer.
My dream is to get my online college degree. That's why Spectrum has affordable solutions to keep you connected. At Spectrum, we are committed to delivering reliable, affordable internet and unlimited mobile to keep you connected to what matters most to you.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable. The sad reality is, fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back to Spectrum News 1. It's your weather on the ones, looking at high temperatures on Friday. The cold front stretched through the Great Lakes all the way down into Texas. Ahead of that front, temperatures either getting to or pretty close to 90 degrees from Dallas all the way up to Columbus, Ohio. Behind the front, that cooler fall-like air descending in the upper Midwest. Minneapolis, Chicago in the 60s. Still baking in the west. LA 99, 109 in Phoenix. It's like the 105th straight day with temperatures at or above 100 degrees there in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, that cold front combining with the heat and humidity in the Ohio River Valley, leading to a marginal risk, a level 1 risk of severe weather for folks there in northern Kentucky through Ohio and western Pennsylvania on Friday through the evening hours. It does look like some rain chances for the eastern side of the country. However, they're going to miss out on the severe weather threat as this front moves to the east. And of course, the heavy rain in the Gulf Coast states has turned streets into rivers in portions of Florida, in southern Louisiana, and they're going to get even more rain over the next 24 hours as this low and stationary boundary don't move much. The next 24 hours, rainfall anywhere from 4 to 5 to almost 6 inches in southern Louisiana. You go over to Florida, though, you find another 2 to 4 inches in isolated spots. Not everywhere, just some isolated locations, but they don't need any more rain. But here it comes as the cold front actually picks up this area of low pressure. But the eastern side of the country looking pretty good after the showers move out during the first part of the day. Saturday afternoon into Sunday looking good. Saturday, temperatures in the 60s and 70s in the Midwest and upper Midwest. Much cooler area, 10-degree temperature difference in the deep south. Still some scorching heat across the western side of the country, but with a pattern change coming next week, that heat will be alleviated. We'll talk about that and discuss the tropics too coming up in just 10 minutes.
If you're just joining us, here's what you need to know. The 14-year-old Georgia school shooting suspect and his father both appeared separately in court Friday. The teen is accused of opening fire at the Appalachia High School in Georgia, killing 2 students and 2 teachers. And a small victory in the long road of Donald Trump's legal issues. The judge overseeing his hush money trial has delayed sentencing until after the 2024 election. Trump will now be sentenced on November 26th. And with just days into the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, the vice president announced Friday her campaign has raised $361 million in her first full month as a candidate. That's what you need to know. The Labor Department says employers added more than 140,000 jobs in August, signaling a fresh sign the economy is cooling down. Analysts predict it's the final piece of evidence the Federal Reserve needs to begin cutting interest rates. Spectrum's Charlotte Scott spoke with the acting labor secretary about the new numbers and what it means for consumers.
The addition of 142,000 jobs in August was weaker than expected. Economists had forecast that the economy would grow by about 160,000 jobs. But the gain still represented an improvement over July, when only 89,000 positions were added. The Biden administration put a positive spin on Friday's numbers.
Well, this is a strong jobs report.
Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su said the report showed continued growth. And she noted the unemployment rate ticked down to 4.2% from 4.3% in July.
And that maintains a trend of a really low rate of unemployment for a very long stretch. It's really the longest stretch since Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon.
In another positive sign, hourly earnings rose 0.4% in August and 3.8% over the past year.
The rate of wage growth has actually outpaced inflation, which does mean that working families can really feel their own increased spending power.
The economy is the #1 issue in the presidential race, and Friday's jobs report was one of the last before Election Day. Former President Donald Trump seized on the new numbers as a disaster and blamed his opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, and President Joe Biden. Sue acknowledged there's more work to do.
Really focus on increasing wages, on retirement security, on making sure that every worker comes home healthy and safe at the end of the day. Unfortunately, for too many workers, that's still not the case, and we're not going to reverse those decades of decline overnight.
The Federal Reserve had signaled that it was likely to begin cutting interest rates later this month. Friday's report only reinforces that decision. The question now, whether the Fed cuts rates by 1/4 or 0.5%. In Washington, Charlotte Scott, Spectrum News.
Israeli soldiers have reportedly killed a 26-year-old American woman during an anti-settlement protest in the West Bank. Leaders in Washington are now calling for an investigation.
I just want to extend my deepest condolences, the deepest condolences of the United States government, to the family of Aishnur Ezgi-Aga. The most important thing to do is to gather the facts, and that's exactly what we're in the process of doing.
Elsewhere, Israeli forces appear to have withdrawn from 3 refugee camps after a military operation that left dozens dead and a trail of destruction. The United Nations says the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is beyond catastrophic at this point, with more than 1 million Palestinians not receiving food rations in August. In Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told the U.S. and allies his military needs the ability to strike deep within Russia, and soon. Zelensky is asking the West to loosen restrictions on certain weapons in order to target Russian air bases and sites that are farther from the border. The request comes after a series of recent deadly Russian airstrikes, including against a Ukrainian military academy that killed more than 50 people. The U.S. says it will provide $250 million more in weapons to Ukraine. Tennis players having a tough time finding a court in crowded New York City. Coming up on Spectrum News, how one team scored a spot at an iconic landmark.
Here's the deal.
In this election year, people need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
Give me one good reason why I shouldn't switch to Spectrum Enterprise.
Well, you said our services meet some of your technology needs.
But not all.
Well, maybe you have too many.
Demand better. And when they call you unreasonable, call us.
Look, I'm switching to Spectrum Enterprise because they'll be a true partner, and I can't run this network without one.
I think you can.
Our clients do it all the time.
Demand better. And when they call you unreasonable, call us.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now, my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/act now.
Welcome back to Spectrum News 1. It's your weather on the ones as we start off with a look at the tropics. It looked like a busy tropical scene just a few days ago. Several different areas of interest from the National Hurricane Center, but now only one has a medium chance of development, and that's an area of low pressure that's right now over the Yucatan Peninsula that is heading into the Gulf of Mexico. Not a lot of hope for anything to develop really, except for that area of low pressure. And once it gets to the Bay of Campeche, it's not really going to have much room to maneuver. So a big rainmaker for northern Mexico and central and southern Texas, but I think that'll be about it. So we turn our attention to the temperatures, again, very fall-like for the weekend across the eastern half of the country. The western half of the country will be baking again in 90 and triple-digit heat. 10, 15, almost 20 degrees above average in some areas up to the Pacific Northwest, while fall-like temperatures are in control. New York, Raleigh, North Carolina, Chicago, Kansas City, even Texas will see below average temperatures as we go into the weekend and start next week. Overall, rain chances are a little bit lower for Saturday, but then pick right back up Sunday for Florida, Gulf Coast states. Other than that, rain looks fairly sparse. Some showers in the higher elevations in the Rockies, maybe a few showers in the Great Lakes region, but a pretty quiet scene unless you live in the deep south and the southern portion of the Gulf Coast states. And hey, NFL football starts. Get excited about that. Weather looking pretty good. Some fall-like temperatures in places like Cincinnati and Cleveland, Chicago, even Seattle looking pretty good. The trouble spots, of course, are going to be in Florida with isolated storms in Miami, temperatures in the upper 80s, and then more showers and storms in Tampa Bay with a late kickoff there, temperatures in the 80s as well. Sunday looks cool across the eastern half with more warm temperatures in the Midwest and West. As we get the week kicked off on Monday, more heat for the areas that have been inundated with the scorching temperatures. And you notice the heat starts to move a little bit farther inland. So temperatures that were in the 70s in the Midwest now into the 80s, and the pattern changing as we head into next week. That scorching weather across the West, the extreme heat finally taking a break, and slightly warmer, not as fall-like for the Great Lakes and the Northeast. A little pattern change for us next week.
Well, Selena Gomez has now reached billionaire status. The 32-year-old actress, singer, and entrepreneur achieved a financial milestone on Friday. She is now one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the U.S. The vast bulk of her money actually coming from Rare Beauty, her makeup line that is a big hit with influencers and teens. In the concrete jungle of New York City, space for some sports is at a premium, and for tennis enthusiasts, it's not always easy to find a place to play. Spectrum's Steph Manacero speaking with players who've actually found a court at one of the city's most iconic landmarks.
Rush hour at Grand Central Terminal, and everybody's in a hurry. 750,000 people pass through here every weekday, and while most are running down to catch their trains, a few are heading up to hit some balls. 4 floors above the hustle and bustle, the Vanderbilt Tennis Club sits tucked away.
More spin, please. Brush it up.
Dadi Zvulun is the head pro.
Good. Finding a full-size tennis court in Manhattan is not easy. There's less and less options. Nice.
Let alone a full-size court with this view looking south over Park Avenue.
I do sometimes take a peek. You know, if I'm not in the point, I look out and I'm like, oh, there's my apartment down there.
Chances are you've seen it and don't even know it. The big windows, so recognizable from the outside, give way to this hidden gem inside. Finding it is half the fun. Entering from 42nd Street, head into the main terminal, go down the ramp toward the lower level tracks, and across from the Oyster Bar entrance, there are some not so obvious elevators. Take those up to the 4th floor, walk down this hall, and there it is. It took us 8 minutes and 34 seconds, and we only got lost once.
The terminal has so many different entrances and different corridors and so many different sets of elevators. Many times people call us and say, I'm on the 4th floor, but I have no idea where you are. And they realize they're taking the 4th floor in a different side of the terminal.
When Grand Central officially opened in 1913, this space was an art studio.
Good evening from our CBS newsroom in New York.
From the 1930s to 60s, it was home to the CBS broadcast studios. In the 60s, it became an athletic club, and in 2011, the new Vanderbilt Tennis Club moved in. Today, it has 1 full-sized court and 2 smaller practice courts, where you don't even need a hitting partner. This ball machine can help you work on your game. Court time here is coveted and not cheap. Hourly rates run from $90 to more than $350, but the court is typically available and cheapest if you're willing to play late from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m.
We offer what's called late night tennis or night owl tennis. I mean, after all, this is the city that never sleeps.
No matter the time of day, there's no place quite like it to take a break from the rush 4 floors below and play.
It's a moment of freedom in a very dense city.
Steph Manacero, Spectrum News.
Following the Kansas City Chiefs' thrilling season opener, the big win over the Baltimore Ravens last night, the Philadelphia Eagles and Green Bay Packers will face off tonight in the 2nd game of the season, and it's a historic one for the NFL. For the first time ever, the game will kick off in Brazil. Officials say the Eagles are technically the home team hosting the Packers there in Brazil. Kickoff is set for 8:15 Eastern Time, everyone. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to follow me on social media at Dean Meminger. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up. Stay with us.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters. Streaming live on your smart TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News Plus, local stories connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right here in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/team up.
Sometimes in life, in order to move forward, it helps to look back.
To learn from the pioneers and trailblazers.
To gain inspiration from those who came before us.
To show us what it means to act with empathy and to show that love has no labels.
Join WWE and Love Has No Labels throughout the year in celebrating people from all communities and heritages.
Because when love has no labels,
that's a love we can all fight for.